Arizona, the night of March 13th, 1997 began like any other Thursday evening. But soon, their city would be at the center of a huge controversy. At 8:25, the phone was ringing in Terry Proctor's kitchen. But the phone could wait. Something else had captured Terry's attention.
Gail? The hell with it. Come here. You see it? I don't know what it is yet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
That's what he's calling about.
What?
This. It's something about a V formation.
Hurry up.
The strange V-shaped lights Terry and his wife had seen moving across the horizon marked the beginning of a series of unusual events. An hour and a half later, something else began glowing in the sky.
Definitely far away. South Mountain. There's two of them. Figure this one out. There's a double. There's a third one. Hey, Sue! Take a look at this.
Oh my God!
I hit bait dirt. Finally.
Throughout the city, hundreds of people witnessed the strange hovering lights in the night sky.
We're just excited. Why not? They keep coming. Wait, whoa! Look at them all.
I got that one on video.
There's just 4 of them. Look at, there's 3 of them all together.
I got the third one, Poppy.
There's one behind the chimney. One just flared up.
I got 4 of them. Major sighting here.
Local authorities were flooded with calls from concerned residents.
Where is the binocular?
I don't know.
That's it right there. Oh.
You see it? See it? Eye in the middle and it moves. The eye in the middle moves. And if you don't zoom in and out, look at it. It moves in and out.
Okay, who do we call? Should we call the Air Force?
The eerie lights hung in the sky for about 5 minutes, allowing witnesses to videotape and note many details about the size, shape, and color of the mysterious object.
There they are. There's the multiple. Look at that. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 of them. I'm running out of tape.
At one point, there were a total of 9 distinguishable lights in the sky. Then, one by one, they began to disappear.
So bright that they would carry, because we're looking at about 25 miles away. The middle one now.
There one. Oh, another one.
There's another one.
Nope, there goes one.
As the last light faded out over the horizon, the questions began. What could explain the strange lights and V-shaped objects seen by hundreds hovering in the sky over Phoenix that night? On the night of March 13th, 1997, there were 2 separate incidents involving unidentified flying objects in the Phoenix, Arizona area. The first event occurred between 8:15 and 8:45 p.m. The second, just after 10 p.m. The first event involved a V-shaped object first spotted near the town of Paulden. It traveled on a southeasterly course, passing over Phoenix at about 8:30 p.m. Just after 8:45 p.m., the V-shaped object turned and disappeared somewhere northwest of Arizona, near Kingman. Although seen by hundreds of people throughout Arizona, only one known videotape exists of this phenomenon. It was captured on tape by a retired pilot from the front yard of his home in Scottsdale, north of Phoenix.
At about 8:28 that evening, I was outside with my video camera and happened to look up, right about up in there. and saw a formation of lights moving from north to south. The V formation that flew over consisted of between 5 and 6 amber lights only. Over a period of somewhere between 15 to 20 seconds, there was an apparent change in the position of some of the lights within the formation. The perceived altitude would have been 10 to 15,000 feet, and that would have probably been somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 to 400 knots, given the distance that they traveled. But it was totally silent, completely and totally silent.
Although Terry was the only eyewitness to actually record the mysterious V-shaped object on videotape, many other people throughout Arizona reported seeing the UFO that evening. This computer-generated illustration was created by artist Tim Lee. Tim and his entire family witnessed the event from their home in north central Phoenix.
The right arm of the object went directly over this house, over the property, and the left arm of that was probably about 2.5 blocks over in that direction. So when it came over, it pretty much dominated this whole quarter of this little valley up here.
You could see that between the lights on each arm was solid. There was no stars. You could not see any stars between each light.
When it came over, it wasn't moving or wavering back and forth. It wasn't floating or jumping. It almost was like a computer simulation of some kind. It was so straight.
They were huge orbs of light, and my impression was that this object was very close, that it was going to land or crash on the street. And that's what really got our attention. And then it went straight up and over us where it was formed a V formation.
It was close enough to feel that it could set down over top of the mall and cover it. It was that big.
Some witnesses will even tell you they ducked when they first saw it because they thought it was going to hit them. That's how low it was. No noise whatsoever and very huge. I got to see the total side view of it, where I got to say that this thing's close to 1 mile long.
I do not know what that was. It was not consistent with any aircraft that I know of the way it was.
Just 90 minutes after the light formation abruptly disappeared, Terry's camera captured a second pattern of strange lights hanging in the dark skies over Phoenix. The major significance of this 10 p.m. event is that these lights visible throughout the Phoenix area were recorded on videotape by at least 4 witnesses. And none of these photographers will ever forget that moment when their world turned upside down.
It was around 9:55, 10 o'clock. I went out to turn off our watering system, and as I walked out the back porch, the city lights are underneath, and there are these 9 lights suspended in the sky. The size was enormous in comparison to the city lights, and I think that's what struck me at first when I walked out there. It was hung suspended in the sky, and it was so enormous. They appeared to be at least 1 mile wide, probably more.
I just got done watching television about 10 o'clock and went out on my patio, and our home faces southwest across the city of Phoenix. And I noticed a bright orange amber type light up on one of the peaks. And I said, I'm going to take a picture of that thing and see what it looks like.
Figure this one out. There's a double.
As I was videotaping it, all of a sudden, lower and to the right of it, an entire display of lights started to come on in the sequence. And they formed an arc, gently falling arc. Extremely bright. They were brighter than any lights that I could see in the city in the foreground. And knowing that the mountain range, the distance, I estimate the lights to be anywhere from 20 to 25 miles away from my point of filming.
We've seen lights over the years on the mountain, never in this type of configuration. They were similar in color, they were similar in size and shape as to what we saw that night.
Across town, Steve Blonder was actually waiting for the lights to appear that Thursday night. Steve was certain he would see something, as during each of the previous 4 nights, he had witnessed a similar phenomenon in the sky.
Individual orange, amber type lights every single night around 10 after 9, right under the star of Sirius, below and to the left of Orion's belt. My wife was an astronomy student, so we were noting that.
Convinced the mysterious lights would reappear, Steve enlisted the help of 2 local UFO investigators. Bill Hamilton and Tom King jumped at the chance to document an actual sighting in progress.
When we got up here on the balcony, we were asking Steve where he was seeing these orange lights from. And he pointed in the southeast, in the southwest, over to the west. And just as he was pointing this out and some other people were pointing out where they had seen the lights, somebody shouted.
Where? Oh, look at that. There's another one.
I had no idea what it was.
This isn't first for me. They're lined up in a pattern, man. There's geometry behind this.
They appeared to be so low that these palm trees behind us would eventually be getting in the shots and obscuring the object. So I jumped up here and I hit record again to start recording. Later I thought, is this one object we're looking at, or is this a series of objects looking possibly like one? I don't know.
Third one popped up. Major sighting here.
We couldn't believe it. You know, it was all of a sudden after 4 nights of seeing, individual lights flying all over the sky, to see these lighting up in a formation, we were overwhelmed, to say the least.
While Steve Blonder viewed the phenomenon from the balcony of his home, 30 miles to the northwest, truck driver Bill Greiner was checking out a different kind of air show from a road on the outskirts of Luke Air Force Base. Greiner's eyewitness account suggests that the military was well aware of the unidentified lights in the sky.
I watched 2 jets come out of Luke, and they come out real quick. They had their afterburners on. They had huge flames coming off of them. And then as soon as those 2 were airborne, another one come out, a third one come out from behind it. And as soon as they were airborne, all 3 jets made an abrupt turn and headed for the closest object to the base, which was in the southwest. And as soon as the jets got to the object, it shot straight up and disappeared right in front of me.
Air traffic controllers at Sky Harbor Airport noticed the lights hovering on the southern horizon.
On the evening of March 13th, I was on duty with 7 other controllers, and to the south of the airport over South Mountain, we observed 5 to 6 very bright, amber-colored, equally spaced apart lights. All of our rivals that evening were inbound from the east, landing to the west, so we thought that they probably weren't airplanes.
Oddly, these objects visible with the naked eye did not register on the control tower's radar. And some pilots flying in the area soon became concerned for their own safety.
There was one report, a query from a pilot in a Bonanza that was talking to our adjacent facility on one of the frequencies and asked something to the effect that, hey, what are these lights around me or over me? And the controller responded, well, I don't have anything on radar.
Come on, be an aircraft or something.
When we return, what was this strange object in the sky? Eyewitnesses tell their compelling stories.
Gordon, welcome to Strauss's place. Tell me exactly what you saw.
On Discovery Sunday next. Now back to UFOs over Phoenix. Explore.
The facts seem clear. At approximately 8:30 p.m., an enormous V-shaped object glided silently across the state of Arizona. 90 minutes later, a formation of eerie lights appeared somewhere southwest of the city of Phoenix. These 2 events were seen by hundreds of ordinary citizens. Not surprisingly, the local media became a focal point of controversy.
12 News, Blair Meeks.
A typical night in the newsroom, you're standing around, nothing's really happening, then all of a sudden, phone calls start happening. Boom. What are these strange lights? What are these strange lights? We're seeing lights over here, we're seeing lights over there. I mean, we must have had 24 phone calls within a 10 or 15 minute period.
This is video of what thousands of Arizonans saw March 13th.
It's been the talk of the town.
You're watching News 15 at 5.
The answers are elusive.
Many of you saw this row of lights as they hovered above the valley horizon.
The mystery of the Phoenix lights will be featured tomorrow morning on Good Morning America.
Well, the first day, it was chaos because there were so many witnesses and we didn't know who had footage and who didn't have footage, and we were trying to locate footage right away.
Gordon, welcome to Strauss's place. Tell me exactly what you saw.
I look at these things, and there were no blinking lights, none of the blinking lights.
What time was this?
From the moment I went on the air, my phones filled up. It was such a surge of phone calls that we almost lost our switchboard.
It was hard to wade through all the information and try and piece together what actually did occur, because some people reported seeing lights at 8:15, other people reported seeing lights at 10:15, some people saw them as stationary objects over the city, some people saw them as moving objects coming in from the north.
Some of the witnesses we talked to seemed very objective, just curious. They would bring us tapes and say, I don't know what this is, but I got it on tape. I'm not some kook out there. I just happened to be outside my house and got these pictures, but I can't explain it.
I don't think there was any acceptance at all by the media until it was obvious. There were thousands of people that saw them.
The various media outlets in Phoenix were inundated by phone calls on March 13th. But apparently, according to military spokesmen, the switchboard was quiet at nearby Luke Air Force Base.
It's my understanding that at least one spokesman from Luke Air Force Base, acting in an official capacity, the following day, that is the 14th of March, represented that Luke Air Force Base had taken no telephone calls about the incident that had occurred the night before. Well, that's an interesting statement because I called them twice that night myself, based on having been given their number by a number of the people who had called us with sighting reports, who said that they had already called Luke Air Force Base. That's a pretty prominent object in the night sky. Moreover, my long-distance telephone log shows very clearly that I did call the base switchboard that night and had lengthy conversations, 5 or 6 minute conversations. Specifically, it was with operator number 5, very nice, very accommodating young woman who admitted to me that her switchboard that night, the 13th of March, had been, to use her term, paralyzed by calls to the switchboard about the object that had flown over Arizona earlier that night.
With no explanation forthcoming, the media frenzy died down. For nearly 2 months, the mysterious lights seen above Phoenix remained just that, a mystery. Despite requests from dozens of eyewitnesses and concerned citizens, no federal, state, or local government agency investigated the incident.
I guess I'm going to mention this because I'm a little
Then, on May 6th, 1997, at a Phoenix City Council meeting, Councilwoman Frances Barwood posed a simple question.
Anybody has any information from the city, and if the city is checking into it?
I said, can we find out why nobody's investigating? Can we look into it? And there was this silence.
People are starting to ask more questions. Thanks. Thank you.
And then that was kind of it, and went on to the next one.
No one from the city council seemed to feel that there was any compelling reason to investigate the sightings. Undaunted, Barwood kept pushing the city, trying to get officials to take the many eyewitness reports seriously.
And the response that I got back, which was about a week later, was that the city of Phoenix did not have an Air Force, which I kind of knew, and that they had received less than 5 phone calls into the police department. And I thought that was odd because I was told that they had gotten a lot of phone calls. So that to me didn't make sense if, they're saying they were overwhelmed with phone calls, and then the response I got back from the city manager's office was they had less than 5 phone calls. To them, it was not important.
43 days after Councilwoman Barwood's initial request, Arizona Governor Fife Symington announced that his office would spearhead an official government investigation into the events of March 13, 1997.
We're going to make all the necessary inquiries, and we're going to get to the bottom of it. We're going to find.
This announcement came as welcome news to concerned Phoenix citizens who had been waiting more than 3 months for an explanation to the strange events they witnessed. On June 19th, Governor Symington called a press conference to present what he considered vital information regarding the incidents. He announced that a police investigation had determined the source of the lights, and for the first time admitted that there may have been an extraterrestrial connection.
And now I'll ask Officer Stein and his colleagues to escort the accused into the room so that we may all look upon the guilty party. Don't get him too close to me, please. It's, you know. Now, this just goes to show that you guys are entirely too serious.
Then he takes off his mask and he realizes it's one of the governor's aides, and everyone has a good chuckle. Well, some people had a good chuckle. The TV station that carried it live wasn't too happy, but the governor said it was just, a little joke, and he was having some fun with it.
My 10-year-old saw that, and that really made her feel uncomfortable because she's feeling that they're sitting there saying that what she saw she didn't see. She saw it, I saw it, other parents saw it, teachers saw it, a lot of people in the valley saw it, but they won't give us an answer.
The governor's lighthearted attitude and the lack of any official government investigation to the events of March 13th left many of the concerned eyewitnesses dumbfounded. Frustrated and angry, they began searching for answers on their own.
Submitted for your approval. What have we got here?
When we return, investigators examine the striking evidence on Discovery Sunday next. To UFOs over Phoenix. Explore.
On March 13, 1997, witnesses saw a V-shaped object fly over the state of Arizona. 90 minutes later, hundreds more observed a formation of eerie lights hovering over the city of Phoenix. Despite clear photographic evidence of these events, there was no official investigation. Finally, desperate for answers, many eyewitnesses turned elsewhere for help. Village Labs is a computer visual effects design firm operated by Michael Tanner and Jim Delatoso. In addition to their work for films and television, Tanner and Delatoso have carefully studied reports and analyzed photographic evidence of many UFO sightings. They have received a great deal of media exposure for their various investigations, and as they are located in Phoenix, they became a natural place for concerned residents to turn.
We're a lab. We're just like a police lab. We're just like a medical lab where professional investigators send us their evidence. And we've looked at hundreds and hundreds of cases where the evidence that we get is film or video. Thanks for coming to the Phoenix Lights briefing number 4.
In town meetings like this, eyewitnesses finally found someone who would take them and their sightings seriously.
It wasn't anything I'd ever seen before because the lights were extremely bright, white lights, and there were 5 because I distinctly counted them to make sure that there were 5 lights.
Tanner and Delatoso began their investigation by conducting a series of discussion groups with eyewitnesses to the events.
If it was helicopters, these people, either they were connected with a bar or something like that, or they were really super excellent flyers because it wasn't doing any of this, it wasn't doing any of that, it wasn't doing any of that. It was like locked.
Although many aspects of the eyewitness reports were the same, there were some discrepancies between accounts.
We looked at it for a couple seconds, and then I realized that I had my telescope out. So I pointed my telescope at it, and at that point I noticed that they were airplanes.
I did not see airplanes. I watched this thing come at me from great distance, and it took a long time for it to even arrive. And if these guys...
The witnesses represent the total cross-section of our society here. We have truck drivers, we have doctors, we have lawyers, we have retired military, and they're all genuine.
Have you ever seen any kind of lights like that on an airplane?
Never seen anything like this before, ever. Anywhere.
They're just simply ordinary people having extraordinary experiences, and they're sharing those with us. You saw the lights coming. What? Tell me again the shape.
Well, at first, it was kind of like a rounded arc.
The need to interview people directly, the eyewitnesses, in addition to those who shot videos, became apparent. Let's come on to this position.
Using information gathered from the discussion groups and hours of interviews with more than 100 witnesses, the two investigators were able to construct a timeline of events for the entire evening, beginning with the first event at 8:15 p.m., which Michael Tanner believes was connected to the second 10 p.m. event.
We established that this formation came in somewhere around 8 o'clock and left in the direction that it came somewhere around 10:30 that night. So we had a general timeline we were able to construct and a general flight path.
The next phase of the Delitoso and Tanner investigation focused on several of the videotapes that recorded the phenomenon.
So the landmarks that we have are the hill that's in the foreground of Mike's backyard.
Selected portions of the second event videos were captured into their computers.
Unknown. So what we've done is take the Mike Kristen shot and grab one frame and now have it in an image processing program where we can do some study on it. A candle, a headlight, a light bulb, all have different optical characteristics. So what we want to do is get past all of the illusion that lights look alike and get to the very specific of how are they different, the fingerprint. So first thing that we do is identify all light sources in the video. We have street lights, we have airplane lights, we have unknown types of city lights, and they're all mixed up together.
Using the computer, Delitoso compares frequency waves of known lights with the frequency waves of lights seen on the night of March 13th.
When we compare all the different light sources to each other, we find that only the unknown objects in all of the video have this purity of wave shape. Now let's go over here and just look at another one of these lights and see if they have any characteristics that are similar. This is a really messy one. See, the red, green, and blue are way out of alignment. The unknown lights don't match. They don't match the characteristics of quartz lights or airplane lights or street lights or Hale Bopp. We can't get a match between the unknown and knowns that we have stored.
What were these eerie lights? Despite high-tech, sophisticated optical analysis, they were no closer to solving this baffling mystery.
When we return, video technology helps investigators inspect the evidence on Discovery Sunday next. Back to UFOs over Phoenix. Explore.
On June 25th, 1997, a convincing explanation for at least one of the Phoenix UFO events emerged from a local TV station.
Well, it's a possible explanation into those mystery lights that appeared over the valley in March.
But some of you aren't buying it. 12 News has video that might explain what was going on. Let's start with pictures that were taken on March 13th. Many of you saw this row of lights as they hovered above the valley horizon. Now, take a close look at these pictures that we shot just last night. These are flares that the Air Force was dropping near Gila Bend.
Now let's go back to the video from March. You'll remember the lights faded out one by one. Let's take a look. They're going to see how they're slowly fading out one by one. And again, looking back at those flares from last night, they also burn out one by one. There they go.
Illumination flares like those recorded by KPNX on June 25th are used by military aircraft to light up battlefields and expose targets during night combat. Dropped from high-altitude aircraft and attached to tiny parachutes, the flares, which descend very slowly, can burn brightly for up to 5 minutes.
When we saw those lights pop on in the sky, to us, they looked exactly the same. The photographer and I just looked at us and goes, well, there's your light. It looked so similar to us, it had to be the explanation. Although we didn't know who could have dropped the flares that night.
If the lights seen hovering on the horizon on March 13th were in fact flares, then who dropped them? Initially, Air Force officials denied that any of their aircraft were involved in maneuvers in the area that night. But oddly, after the KPNX broadcast, they reversed their statement. Now they admit that on the night in question, the visiting Maryland Air National Guard had conducted night maneuvers, which involved the use of illumination flares.
Our unit was flying March 13th, 1997 as part of Operation Snowbird, and we were conducting night training. This is a map of the training area that we use when we fly in the airplane, and we take off from Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, fly to the northwest into the military operating area, and at that particular night, our aircraft flew to the North Tack Range, and that's where they deployed the flares for the training mission that evening. Phoenix sits just to the north of this area. The lights that were observed were about 30 miles southwest of Phoenix, which is close to exactly where the North Tack Range sits.
The flares being dropped at the gunnery range seemed to fit a lot of what people might have seen at 10 o'clock.
But despite what appeared to be overwhelming evidence, many witnesses remained unconvinced that illumination flares were the cause of the 10 p.m. phenomenon.
The flare theory would fly for me if I didn't actually see the footage of the flares that I've seen that just aren't consistent with that. If they are, maybe they're more advanced flares because these hung suspended for so long.
I considered whether what I was looking at were flares, but when I looked through the telescope, I could see no suspension apparatus. In other words, no parachute or balloon. They had no vertical descending motion. They did not start to drift together as flares usually do, or apart. In other words, they maintained a fixed relationship between themselves. And I could also see that they were round lights of some kind, like orbs, and they were pulsating at a high frequency.
While they look similar, they don't look the same as flares. Flares flicker. Flares illuminate what's around them, and these lights over Phoenix didn't do that.
It would be very difficult for me to believe that if flares had been dropped, that they could stay that perfectly aligned and that we couldn't see at least one of them moving or dropping.
Now, a very key point to this is, to eliminate the flare hypothesis is, we saw no aircraft whatsoever. No jet aircraft, no helicopters that could have dropped these flares.
So let's go over and look at this object right here.
Shortly after the announcement about the Maryland Air National Guard maneuvers, Jim Delatoso reanalyzed the videotapes.
From the Channel 12 video, we have the flare objects.
This time, he compared the light formations recorded on March 13th with the images of the illumination flares shot by KPNX on June 25th.
When we compared these lights to flares, we didn't get a match. The optical characteristics between the unknown objects and flares don't match. They're so different from each other that it's not even close.
But not everyone agrees with Delatoso's conclusions or the accuracy of his methods.
Videotape does not have the resolution that you need to perform those particular type of tests. Videotape is very, very limited in use in investigating UFO instances. The camera actually overloads from the brightness of these flares. We'd rather see film, motion picture film, or actually 35 millimeter, which gives us a lot more dynamic range and much more resolution than videotape does.
We've gone to extremes to test them for being flares. And the naysayers that want them to be flares, guess what? They can just keep on doing that. We've moved on to other things.
According to the Maryland Air National Guard, the illumination flares were deployed, fell, and disappeared from sight, behind the mountain range seen in the video. But many eyewitnesses claimed that the lights they saw were in front of the range, and therefore could not have been the same flares. In an attempt to settle this crucial debate, we gave the tapes shot by one of the witnesses to Dr. Leonid Rudin of Cognitech, a California-based image processing firm. Rudin examined the same images that had been previously analyzed by Jim Delatoso.
We were presented with two videotapes. One videotape was shot at night. Another videotape was made during the day from approximately same location with the camera pointing in approximately same direction.
Give you the angle and idea of the surroundings and what we saw at night and the mountains where the lights appeared to be. There's a mountain range here as well. We don't know where it is over here.
Rudin first lined up the day and nighttime images, using the ridgeline in the foreground as a reference. By overlaying the images, he could determine if the lights simply vanished on their own or disappeared behind the distant mountain range.
We superimposed two video sequences. We produced a new video sequence in which each frame is a combination of two frames, night and day.
We registered the hill. We have no control whether it comes below the mountain or above the mountain.
After several hours, the intricate process was complete.
That's right.
This is a loop which repeats this disappearing sequence over and over again. And the one thing that we see here, which is striking, is that at no point the lights disappear above the ridge of the mountain, and at no point the lights descend below the ridge of the mountain. The disappearance of the light coincides precisely with the point in time when the light is exactly at the top of the mountain. And that happens not with one light, not with two lights, but with all the lights that we see on the videotape. Therefore, the only conclusion we have is that those lights are behind the mountains, not in front of the mountains.
Armed with this information, watch the videotape again and judge for yourself. Are these merely flares dropping behind a mountain range, or UFOs mysteriously vanishing? Sometimes the human eye can form its own conclusions. This dramatic demonstration seems to support the contention that the 10 o'clock event was the result of illumination flares being dropped behind the distant ridge. However, the controversy surrounding the V-shaped formation seen between 8:15 and 8:45 p.m. is far from over.
return, questions persist. What is the military hiding? On Discovery Sunday next. To UFOs over Phoenix. Explore.
Although many believe there is overwhelming proof that the mysterious lights seen over Phoenix at 10 p.m. were caused by military flares, several intriguing questions remain. Why didn't the aircraft which deployed the flares show up on radar?
7.40, United 489. Yeah, I think so.
What caused the similar phenomenon seen and recorded on video by Steve Blonder 3 days earlier?
There's one right there. I see it. See it right there, right there.
And finally, what can explain the V-shaped formation that passed over Arizona between 8:15 and 8:45 p.m.? Only one known videotape of this UFO event exists. And while today, no one has come forward with a viable explanation, there are plenty of theories about what was streaking through the night skies of Arizona on March 13th, 1997.
I personally think that this is military and that it is some kind of a humongous stealth. And that's my personal opinion. I mean, isn't this the same government that said we didn't have a stealth?
Could be anything from a stealth aircraft or a black project, could even be a military weapon that's actually creating like a hologram image, and that's why the description varies on the shape and makeup of the object.
If this was a large, top-secret military aircraft, why are they flying it over one of the largest metropolitan areas in the country with the lights on? What's up with that, you know? And so for that reason, that theory is hard for me to accept as the answer.
There's just not enough evidence to convince me that it was tactical aircraft or something from another world. It's somewhere, it could be somewhere in between. I mean, there's just no way for me to know.
I get a feeling that people are unsettled because there are no clear-cut answers. I get a feeling that the people that want to believe are unsettled because we can't get any kind of answers that seem to tie up all the loose ends. And I believe that the people that scoff at the idea of extraterrestrial craft visiting Phoenix, I believe they're a little unsettled because thus far, it certainly hasn't been disproven that that was the case.
Some believe that the key to solving the mystery of both events may lie in the reaction and actions taken by military officials on the night of March 13th, 1997. Jim Delatoso is convinced that any flares released that evening were directly related to the V-shaped UFO seen between 8:15 and 8:45 p.m.
But what probably happened is that unknown aircraft of unknown origin penetrated into military airspace. And this has happened before. And the U.S. Air Force deployed planes to follow these unknown aircraft. And the military aircraft flew in a circle around the state, released flares as a decoy, and the unknown objects went away. Maybe they'll be back.
Peter Davenport of the UFO Reporting Center also believes the military is hiding the truth about what really happened that night. He believes that from the beginning, media and eyewitnesses were purposely misled.
Approximately 7 hours after the first report of this incident, we received a number of contacts, communications from individuals who represented to us. They asserted that they worked on Luke Air Force Base, and they gave us a volume of information about the details of an alleged scramble of F-15C fighters that night. Subsequent investigation could not corroborate any of the information that we had received from the party, and in fact, we are unable to locate this individual now.
You know, I think we have to focus on the real spectacle. It didn't take place in the sky. The real spectacle took place on the ground after the sightings. And the real spectacle was watching the government respond to so many people who saw something with their own eyes and only wanted an answer. And what they were told by the military, by the government, was this just isn't worthy of an investigation.
Many believe that had authorities taken the eyewitnesses seriously, simply investigated the events, and made a serious attempt to address their very real concerns, the conspiracy theories that so often surround UFO sightings would have been given no chance to thrive.
At this point, months after the event has happened, I have no idea what these lights were. I would like to know. I wish I knew. I may never know. None of us may. But whether they're man-made, whether they're from another galaxy, whether they're flares, I don't know. At this point, they are truly UFOs, unidentified flying objects.